Shabbat Shalom and welcome to Israel Update. Today is a little bit more of a somber one because we're remembering the Holocaust, Yom HaShoah. It's this day of remembering the Shoah, or what happened in the Holocaust. And I know that a lot of us know about it, but there's such a danger in the society that we're living in right now, where there is this push against truth and a desire to replace that truth with a convenient relative concept of something that's loosely based on truth. And that is a very dangerous place for us to be in as a society. And so today, I want to speak for a couple of minutes to you about the Holocaust. Now, for those of you that know what this is, I encourage you to lean in and just see if God is speaking to your heart in any way, in any new kind of way. But the Holocaust was the planned, systematic extermination of 6 million Jews by Hitler and his Nazi regime. And the Jews, they weren't the only ones targeted, but they did make up the overwhelming majority of people killed. And one of the most dangerous things about what happened, and this wasn't even that long ago, it feels like a very long time ago, but it wasn't actually that long ago, because when Hitler came to power in 1933, and then Kristallnacht happened in 1938, and then the invasion of Poland happened on the 1st of September 1939, this is where we start seeing this movement towards full-blown death camps. But anybody who was deemed by the Nazi regime as a non-contributor to society was also targeted. The Roma or Sinti population, they were like a gypsy group of people. Hundreds of thousands of that population was killed. Anybody with a physical or mental deformity was killed as well. Not anybody, but a huge amount of people. There was a program that was instituted called the T4 Euthanasia Program at this awful place called the Hardemere Institute, where people who were mentally disabled or physically disabled were sent there, and they actually started doing test runs using Zyklon B, using gas, using all the different systems of death. They started running tests on people that were mentally and physically disabled because they were in an institution far away from family. And then what started happening is all these family members started receiving similar messages that were almost copy-pasted, saying, oh, this terrible outbreak of flu happened, and because of that, we weren't able to inform you in time, but your loved one has died, and here's a box of ashes. Later, it was discovered that the Hardemere Institute was burning bodies day and night to get rid of the evidence, to get rid of the bodies, and that was a test run, as it were, for what would actually end up happening in Auschwitz and the 6 big death camps. So these labor concentration camps and death camps were set up by Hitler. He wanted the world to be free of any Jew. Atrocities that are genuinely too terrible to imagine happened to millions of people. From insane medical experiments performed on men, women, and little children, to literally working people to death through forced labor and starvation. That was the Holocaust. No mercy, compassion, or value was placed upon life. It was the attempted extermination of an entire people group. And we read about this, the final solution to the Jewish problem, as Hitler called it, when it was birthed in this awful room in Berlin with 12 people, and how this was their plan, was to get rid of any Jew, because this hatred that filled Hitler's heart was supernatural. But again, I've said this before, I'll probably say it every time I speak about the Holocaust, which will be many times for the rest of my life, because it is something I am determined that people will remember. It's something I am determined to keep teaching children about. And I was a tour guide at the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Durban when Kim was still here, and I was working for him. Part of what I said to him that I would really like to do while I was still in Durban is go do this, and he gave me his full support and blessing. So I did all the training, and I would take groups of school children on tours of the Holocaust Memorial Museum that we had in Durban. So I have a very intense passion about this. I've probably read 30 books on the Holocaust. I've been to Yad Vashem, the main Holocaust Memorial Museum in Israel, I don't know, maybe 7 times. And every city I go to, if I find a Holocaust Memorial Museum, I go there. And the reason is because we cannot afford to forget it. We cannot afford to forget what happened. And that's what society, the media, it's what they're trying to push on us. Already, when you look at different school programs, they're pushing to get Holocaust education removed. In most of the Arab world, it's not taught about, which is shocking and appalling for so many reasons. But there are some major lessons that we can learn about this. And again, looking at the hatred that filled Hitler's heart, looking at what he did to people willingly, with intentionality, with plans. This level of rage was not first found in the heart of Hitler. The first time we see it evidenced is actually in the heart of Haman in the book of Esther, where Haman had this murderous plot to kill all the Jews because he was angry with one Jew named Mordecai who refused to bow down and pay homage to him because Mordecai would only bow down and pay homage to the God of Israel. And we see when you read the book of Esther that this murderous intent was found in Haman's heart, and he had this desire to obliterate and annihilate all the Jews. Because this desire is not a human one. This desire comes from the very heartbeat of the devil. It is supernatural, it is ancient, it is obsessive. And this spirit that desires to get rid of Jews has been evidenced in the heart of the devil for millennia. Because God said, Israel, you are the apple of my eye. The Jews are my chosen people. Israel is my chosen nation. And so the devil comes and has the desire to destroy what it is that God loves so much. So please hear what I'm saying. There are different human vessels that are filled with the spirit that is propagated from the heart of Satan himself. And were the Nazis deceived? Yes, I believe so. Do I believe some of them made a cold, hard decision? Yes, I do. But now the question is, what can we learn from this? What can we take from this? What is our responsibility? The first one, of course, is that dictatorship is dangerous. Hitler was one man with a crazy racist ideology, and it resulted in the torturous death of millions of people. So, that goes without saying. Dictatorship is dangerous. One of the second things we need to remember is that we have a responsibility to speak up when people are being mistreated by others. The Holocaust was allowed to happen because so many people stood by and observed instead of becoming involved. And that's a major thing. There's this beautiful place in Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Israel, called the Avenue of the Righteous. And there have been trees planted along and all around this memorial museum, remembering people that stood up and fought for the Jews. One of the big ones, who's a huge hero of mine, is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German pastor, and he ultimately gave up his life to defend and fight for the Jewish people. In a time when Hitler was in control, Hitler established totalitarianism by taking control of the church, of the law, and of education. Those were the big three things that he took control over, which is why he was able to establish that degree of totalitarianism. But in the midst of that, in the midst of the German church professing allegiance to Hitler over the scriptures, professing allegiance to Hitler over God, Dietrich Bonhoeffer stood up and he refused to bow down to that, and he stood firm and he helped the Jews, and he taught people, he taught his little congregation that the Jews were God's chosen people and that they needed to be protected. And 2 weeks before the war ended, before the Nazis were defeated, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was hung in a concentration camp because he gave up his life. He paid with his life to fight for the Jewish people. And he's one of many. His is more prolific, a little bit well known, Oskar Schindler. A lot of you will know about that if you've seen Schindler's List. And now there are thousands of Jews alive today because of one man, Oskar Schindler, and because of what he did. And so this Avenue of the Righteous has got trees planted for people that were prepared to fight for the Jews in a time of unrest, uncertainty, and where the penalty was death. Corrie ten Boom is another one. Her sister Betsy perished in Ravensbrück when they were sent away as German citizens because they were trying to fight for and defend the Jews. We have a responsibility to be involved and to remember and to stand up and to speak. It's something practical that we can do. The reason I'm speaking about this today, I know it's a heavy topic for a Friday, but the reason that I'm doing that is because we have to remember, and we have a responsibility to tell other people so that they too can remember. It is imperative that this takes place. So first lesson, obviously, dictatorship is dangerous. The second one is that we have a responsibility to speak up when people are being mistreated. And the third thing is that all life is valuable. We don't get to make judgments about the value of another person's life because they're different to who we are. As human beings, we have to extend grace, compassion, and kindness to other people, no matter who they are. We don't get to decide on the value of life. Life is given by God. He is the one who determines all life. He is the one who gives value to life because he chose to create. We don't have the right to say that this person is more valuable than that person because they contribute in a manner that we deem to be more important. All life is valuable to God. Therefore, all life should be valuable to us. And so as we remember this week, and I know it's a heavy one, but let me encourage you, talk to somebody about it. If you've got children or grandchildren, talk to them about it. Ask them if they know about the Holocaust. Ask if they've ever heard of it. Ask if they've ever seen anything about it. Yad Vashem has a great set of resources online where you can go and watch testimonies of survivors, and you can hear the stories, and it does wreck you. But I think quite often in our culture and in our society, we're kind of chasing after comfort, chasing after something to help turn our brains off. But in this regard, with this topic, I think it's something we need to lean into and say, okay, God, what is it that you want me to do? Because right now as Christians, we have a responsibility to keep standing up for Israel. That's a very important thing, but also for those that are marginalized and those that are mistreated. It's our responsibility, it's our duty, and it's a privilege that God has given us. And so as you go out this week, remember, speak about it, dig in, allow yourself to feel the pain of what the Jewish people went through. And let me encourage you to say, God, how can you use my life to make a difference in the lives of other people? That's something that we can take from this, that's practical. And so I pray this week as you go out, even if you feel pain by leaning in and dealing with what it is that's going on and what today symbolizes and in the memorialization of what it was that happened. Allow God to speak to your heart and show you how you can make a difference in somebody's life. So God bless you. Thank you so much for joining us. Every Friday we're here with a new episode of Israel Update, and you can find us right here where you found us now on israelupdate.org. Thank you. God bless you and have a wonderful week.
Shalom warriors, shalom Abraham friends and Israel partners, and welcome to Israel. This is spring right now. You can see all over the place, everything is blooming. This is a good time in Israel between Passover and Pentecost, the Festival of Weeks. This is a time that God always granted Israel with good things, with freedom, with strength, with power. And I wanted to talk and update you about two things. First of all, I'm talking about strength and power because tonight, I'm filming this on a Wednesday night, and tonight this is the Shoah, the Holocaust Eve. Tomorrow is the Holocaust Day in Israel, and I'm talking about strength and power because when Israel had no strength, when the people of Israel had no power, the enemies of Israel were overcoming. They were taking us into the gallows. They were stronger than us. And then when God brought us back here, next week we're going to celebrate the Independence Day of Israel. God brought us here back on wings of eagles to our promised land 73 years ago. Now Israel has the strength and the power to defend itself by itself. Why is it so important for me to talk to you about this as we are entering into the sadness and the mourning and the grieving over the 6 million Jews, that innocent people that died in the hands of the Nazis when they didn't have the power to fight against this evil regime? And yet we are now in Israel when we do have the strength and the power to defeat any enemy who's going to come against us. Because what's happening right now in Israel, we are surrounded by enemies. And we just saw just few days ago when Iran signed a deal with China and with Russia that they're going to help Iran defend itself, and Iran is going to provide them with oil. Iran signed a deal with China, with Russia for 25 years. A deal of mutual support, mutual defense. This is unbelievable right now. This is a challenge not over Israel only, but over also America that doesn't get the message and going now to sit down, literally now as I'm speaking, sitting down with the Iranians, trying to do some diplomacy to go back to the very bad deal of the nuclear weapons that they signed during the times of Obama. Iran is just buying time, laughing at the West, laughing at America, trying to laugh at Israel. Thank God that Israel is not buying into that story. Just yesterday we heard that Israel attacked a ship of the Iranians, an intelligence ship in the Red Sea. Israel is not sitting down. Israel is strong and firm. Israel is pushing back. waging war against anyone who's coming against us. But what's happening now in the political arena in Israel, this is what the Iranians are hoping for, because we weren't able, since 2 weeks ago, a little bit more, the elections, we weren't able to form a coalition. And now Benjamin Netanyahu and the rest of the Israeli parties are facing a huge challenge, trying to form a government, a functioning, stable government. We don't know what's going to happen, but yesterday the president of Israel, Rubi Rivlin, gave the mandate, gave the authority to Benjamin Netanyahu, thank God right now, to be the first one to try to set up this attempt to build up a coalition. We know that Benjamin Netanyahu is a magic maker. We know that in the past, with his experience and willingly, with God's will, he's going to be able to talk the other parties into entering into a functioning, solid government. Because if we're not going to have a functioning government, a strong coalition, the enemies of Israel are going to look at this as a weakness, and they're going to continue, especially now when Iran, the head of our enemies, the head of the snake, has the backup of the support of China and Russia. They are going to try more and more, harder and harder, to come against Israel and to attack. They were just daring not long ago to enter into the Red Sea, the same Red Sea that God helped Moses to part into two and let the people of Israel go back home. They were sending their intelligence ships closer and closer into the Israeli port of Eilat. Thank God, according to foreign publishers, Israel attacked this ship and took it down. So we are now in a war between the big wars. We are now in a place where Israel needs solid government, strong unity in order to face the challenges that are ahead of us, economically with the COVID, financially, of course, with forming a government and have a budget so the government can form and of course can function, and of course with the security defense challenges that are coming against us now, even from the southern seas of Israel. It was in the Mediterranean until now. It was north in Lebanon with the Hezbollah, from the Syrian front, from the Hamas, and now they're creeping closer and closer into the Red Sea. I believe that if Israel will have a strong functioning government, willing of God, with the will of God, with Benjamin Netanyahu in the head of the government, they are not going to dare to come against us. Our power, our strength is in our unity, in our united front against our enemies. So please, warriors, people who cares for us and loves us, stand together in agreement with us that Israel will have a strong government and will be able to defeat every enemy who comes against us and defend ourselves by ourselves, not like 80 years ago when the Nazis came against us, slaughtered and killed 6 million of us. Tonight, as we are going to sit at home and commemorate and remember the times of the Holocaust, we are also going to pray for the continuation of God's provision, God protection, God deliverance for the people of Israel. I love you a lot, Dubi. Shabbat Shalom. Bye.